how it is with specialized gear. There's always a lot of talk, a lot of buzz. And in the gold prospecting world, the Minelab Gold Monster 1000, definitely one of those talked about pieces.
Oh, absolutely. You hear all sorts of opinions.
Yeah, you hear everything from it's a game changer for tiny gold to, well, it's only good for one specific thing.
Right. A bit polarizing sometimes.
So today, we're doing what we do best, digging deep to see what's really going on with this thing.
Exactly. You've heard the whispers, maybe read some reviews.
Yeah.
And now we're going to, try and cut through the noise.
Yeah.
Our mission with this deep dive is basically to give everyone a clear understanding of the Gold Monster 1000's true capabilities. We've looked at the research, expert field tests, the whole lot.
Okay, so let's get right to the heart of it then. For anyone who hasn't run across it, the Gold Monster 1000 is what they call a VLF detector, very low frequency.
Right. VLF is super common tech in metal detecting. Lots of machines use it.
But this one, it isn't trying to find everything, is it? Like old coins or Civil War relics?
No, not at all. Its focus is laser sharp. We're talking small gold nuggets, tiny flakes. The kind of gold you often find hiding in mineralized soil.
So really think of it as a specialist tool for a very specific job.
That specialized nature is absolutely key. It explains, well, pretty much everything about its design and how it performs. And a huge part of that is its operating frequency.
Right. It runs or hums along, as you put it, at a pretty high 45 kilohertz.
Which is high compared to many detectors.
So what does that 45 kilohertz really mean for finding gold? Well, here's your first big takeaway, I guess. Higher frequencies. They're like tuning into a higher pitch, right?
Good analogy.
Think of lower frequencies like a bass drum, maybe better for those big, deep signals. This high 45 kilohertz is more like a high-pitched whistle. It's much better at picking up those really tiny, faint signals from small gold.
Exactly. Your typical all-purpose detector, maybe running at 7 kilohertz, 10, 14 kilohertz. They're great for general hunting, maybe coins, relics.
Yeah, they might get better depth on bigger stuff.
They might, but they can often just completely miss the minuscule gold that the Gold Monster is specifically built to hear.
So Minelab clearly made a deliberate trade-off there.
Oh, definitely. Prioritizing the detection of the smallest possible gold pieces, that's often where the value is for prospectors, finding that scattered small stuff.
But, okay, are there downsides to running at such a high frequency?
That's a smart question.
Nope.
Potentially, yes. One trade-off can be depth on larger, more conductive targets, like a big silver coin or something.
Because it's listening so hard for the small things.
Kind of. It might not punch down quite as deep for those big signals compared to a lower frequency machine. But again, given its purpose, finding small gold, that seems like an intentional choice by Minelab.
Right. And it looks like they've really thought about the practical side for gold hunters too, like what you get in the box.
Yeah, what comes with it?
You get 2 search coils. There's a standard 10 by 6 inch elliptical coil that's good for covering ground.
Standard size, yeah.
And then there's a smaller 5-inch round coil. That one's all about maximizing sensitivity, getting into tight spots where tiny gold might be hiding.
Okay, so you've got options right out of the box. Big areas, small areas.
Yep. And both come with protective skid plates, which is definitely a plus when you're scraping over rocks and rough ground.
Yeah, essential really. That dual coil setup, it immediately signals that versatility within gold prospecting. Larger coil for searching, smaller one for zeroing in, tailored flexibility.
And what about lugging it around? Prospecting often means hiking into places.
Good point. Is it portable?
Seems like it. The shaft breaks down into 3 pieces, so it should pack down pretty small. Plus, it's got dual power options.
Oh, like batteries.
Yeah, a rechargeable lithium-ion battery, which is convenient, but also a backup pack that takes 8 AA batteries. Useful if you're way off the grid.
That's really handy. Can't always recharge easily out there.
And they even throw in vehicle charging adapters, which, let's face it, is almost a necessity for a serious prospecting trip.
Totally. The emphasis on portability, multiple power sources, it screams. Designed for remote gold fields. Reliability, ease of transport, they've thought about it.
Definitely. But despite all that, one of the biggest selling points seems to be, well, how simple it is to use.
Yes, the turn on and go aspect.
Exactly. Minelab markets it like that, and honestly, from everything I've seen, it's not just hype. You literally power it up, hold the coil in the air for maybe 10 seconds while it does a quick calibration, and you're pretty much ready to start hunting. No fiddling with complicated ground balancing procedures, no digging through endless menus.
That ease of use is a massive plus, isn't it? especially for people just starting out in gold prospecting. Gets you searching faster, less intimidation factor.
Absolutely. But that simplicity on the surface, what's actually going on, like, under the hood? Is it just basic?
Good question. No, it's simple to use, but there's some serious tech inside. It's got a 24-bit processor running the show.
Okay, 24-bit. What does that enable?
Well, it drives some really impressive automatic features. The big one is the automatic ground balancing.
Ah, ground balance. That's always a key thing, especially for gold.
Crucial.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar, ground mineralization, basically. The natural minerals in the soil, like iron oxides, can really mess with a detector.
Like static noise, right. Makes it hard to hear the good signals.
Exactly. These minerals create their own signals. They can either drown out the faint whisper of small gold or give you false signals, making you dig for nothing.
And normally you have to manually adjust the detector to cancel that out, keep tweaking it.
Traditionally, yes. It's called ground balancing, and in mineralized areas, you might need to do it quite often as the soil changes. It can be a bit of an art.
Right, but the gold monster.
It handles this continuously, automatically. As you sweep the coil, that 24-bit processor is constantly analyzing the ground signal and making micro-adjustments in real time.
So you don't have to constantly stop and fiddle.
Pretty much. Instead of messing with settings, you can just focus on listening for targets and swinging the coil. It's like having a co-pilot constantly optimizing the machine for the ground you're walking over.
That sounds like a huge benefit, especially in those really iron-rich, nasty ground conditions where gold often hides.
It really is. Manual ground balancing can be tricky to master, so having the machine handle it so effectively lets you concentrate on finding gold. Now, how do you actually use it? What are the main modes?
It keeps it simple there, too. Two main operating modes. The default is gold mode.
Okay.
That's designed to reject iron signals, so it helps you focus on targets that are more likely to be gold, ignoring bits of iron junk. More efficient, maybe.
Makes sense. And the other mode?
That's called deep all metal mode. As the name implies, it detects all metals, iron included.
Ah, so no discrimination.
Right. The idea is this might give you a little bit more depth, potentially pick up targets that are deeper or maybe mask in the other mode, but...
You'll dig more trash.
What?
Iron trash.
Exactly. So gold mode for efficiency, deep all metal for being super thorough if you don't mind digging more iron.
Okay, a clear trade-off. Efficiency versus potentially slightly more depth, and sensitivity. How much control do you get?
You've got manual sensitivity levels, 1 through 10, so you can dial it in yourself.
Standard stuff.
But there are also 2 automatic sensitivity settings, Auto 1 and Auto 2.
Okay. How do they work?
Well, the general consensus from the experts, the field testers, seems to be that Auto 1 is the sweet spot. They say it works great, like 95% of the time in most gold prospecting areas.
So set and forget, mostly.
Pretty much. Auto 2 cranks the sensitivity up even higher. Sounds good on paper, right? Max sensitivity.
Yeah, but there's always a but.
Right. In really heavily mineralized ground, that extra sensitivity in Auto 2 can apparently make the machine a bit noisy, chattery. You start getting more false signals, phantom beeps when nothing's really there.
Instability. So Auto 2 is maybe for milder ground, or if you're really trying to eke out the absolute maximum.
It seems like it. Auto 1 is probably the more practical, reliable balance for most conditions where you'd actually use this machine.
Makes sense. And what about the display? When it finds something, what does it tell you?
Again, super straightforward. You've basically got this simple indicator. If a target is likely iron, it shows up on the left side.
Okay.
If it's potentially gold, or at least non-ferrous, it shows up on the right side.
And that's it. No numbers?
Nope. No complex numerical target ID system like you see on lots of coin and relic machines, trying to guess if it's a nickel or a pull tab. It's just a very basic, probably iron or could be gold non-ferrous is reading.
Huh. Simple, definitely easy to understand.
Yeah.
But what are the implications of not having a more detailed target ID, especially if you're not in a gold field?
Well, it means you're going to dig more targets that aren't gold, especially non-ferrous trash.
Like foil, pull tabs, small bits of aluminum.
Exactly. Without a numerical ID to give you a hint, like, is this signal reading like typical foil, or is it maybe in the gold range? You're relying purely on that iron-iron split.
So if it beeps on the right side, you're probably digging it.
Pretty much. For someone used to the extra info from a general-purpose machine, yeah, that could feel like a limitation. A bit of a step back, maybe.
Leads to digging more junk to find the goodies.
Definitely. But, okay, let's get to the million-dollar question, or maybe the fraction amount of gram question. How does all this tech actually translate into finding gold in the real world?
Yes. Performance. That's
Yeah.
what matters. What do the tests, the actual field experiences tell us?
Well, in its happy place, those dry, mineralized soils where small gold tends to hang out, the gold monster really seems to shine. Its sensitivity to genuinely tiny pieces of gold is, by all accounts, pretty remarkable.
Like, how small are we talking?
We're talking reliably hitting sub-gram nuggets, even smaller flakes sometimes, the kind of stuff other detectors, especially general-purpose ones, might just glide right over.
Wow, so that high frequency and the auto ground balancing really work together in those conditions.
Absolutely. It's specifically tuned to hear those faint whispers of gold, even when the ground itself is noisy and difficult.
Were there any, like, controlled tests that really broke down this sensitivity?
Yes, absolutely. There was a really interesting one where they tested it with known gold samples, ranging from a tiny zero point zero 0.01 grams
Wow, that's minuscule.
all the way up to a decent 69-gram nugget. And they tested both coils, the standard 10 by 6 and the smaller 5-inch.
Okay, what did they find? Did the big coil go deeper?
Here's where it gets interesting. In terms of maximum detection depth across that whole range of gold sizes, both coils actually performed pretty similarly.
Really? The 10 by 6 wasn't significantly deeper.
Not really, according to this test, but, and this is the key, finding the smaller 5-inch coil actually outperformed the larger one on the tiniest gold pieces.
Ah, so better sensitivity on the small stuff with the small coil.
Exactly. The larger coil only offered a very slight depth advantage, maybe 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, something like that, and only on the bigger target.
That's fascinating. It kind of challenges that common assumption, doesn't it? That bigger coil always equals more depth, especially for tiny targets.
It really does. It highlights how the gold monster, especially with that 5-inch coil, is just hyper optimized for sensitivity to those tiny gold specks.
So if you're mainly hunting for that fine scattered gold, the 5-inch coil might actually be the better choice, not just for tight spaces, but for sensitivity too.
Precisely. It seems the main benefit of the larger coil is just covering more ground faster, not necessarily punching significantly deeper, especially on the small targets this machine is designed for.
Makes sense. What about feedback from people using it out in the field, experienced prospectors?
Well, they consistently praise its performance in those really tough, highly mineralized areas. Because that automatic ground balancing works so well, one very experienced prospector actually gave the advice to not try to control the machine.
Just let it do its thing.
Yeah, basically let it control itself. Trust the automatic systems. That's a pretty strong endorsement of how well those auto features work in the right environment.
That kind of feedback, trust the machine, speaks volumes, doesn't it? Especially about handling difficult ground. But, like any specialized tool, it must have limits, situations where it doesn't do so well.
Oh, absolutely. And this is really crucial for anyone thinking about buying one. Things definitely change when you take the gold monster out of those ideal, dry, mineralized gold zones.
Okay, like where?
Well, several reviewers tried using it as a general purpose detector, taking it to parks, maybe beaches.
How did that go?
By all accounts, pretty badly. Disappointing results. That extreme sensitivity, which is its superpower for tiny gold.
Becomes a curse in trashy areas.
Exactly. It becomes a major liability. One tester described just getting constant signals from the tiniest bits of aluminum foil gum wrappers, little shreds of metal, making it almost unusable in those settings. You'd spend all day digging junk.
Yeah, that's the trade-off, isn't it? Hypersensitive means hypersensitive to everything small and metallic, not just gold. And parks and beaches are full of tiny trash.
Totally. It's optimized for places where gold is the main target you expect to find, not places swimming in decades of dropped foil and pull tabs.
Okay, what about different ground conditions?
Yes.
Not just mineralization, but moisture.
Ah, that seems to be another big limitation. It really seems to struggle in wet conditions.
Wet soil.
Wet sand.
Yeah. Testers reported erratic behavior, false signals, instability when the coil gets near wet soil or wet sand. One reviewer was blunt, just said it was not good for the wet at all.
Wow, okay. So primarily a dry land detector then. Not for beach hunting near the waterline or maybe hunting right after heavy rain.
Doesn't sound like it. Seems limited to dry environments. That's a pretty significant limitation depending on where you live and hunt.
Definitely rules it out for coastal detectorists or those in wetter climates, at least as their primary machine. And back to the display, that simple iron-on-iron ID. How does that play out in these other environments?
Well, as we touched on, it means you're digging a lot of non-ferrous trash if you're not in a gold field.
Because anything non-ferrous just shows up on the potential gold side. Right. Without a more detailed ID to help you guess, is that a pull tab? Is it a corroded zinc penny? Is it foil? You're just left with that basic, probably iron, or it could be something else.
So you dig a lot.
Yeah. For someone used to having target ID numbers to help filter trash, that lack of info could be really frustrating outside of a gold prospecting context. Lots of unnecessary digging.
It just keeps reinforcing that message.
Yeah.
This is built for a very specific hunt, where the potential prize justifies digging more iffy signals. You mentioned a quote from a reviewer earlier.
Yes. There was one comment that just perfectly captured its specialized nature. A reviewer said the detector would be back in the closet until I go to the desert.
Wow. Doesn't get much clearer than that, does it?
Pretty much sums it up. Oh, and one other, maybe more technical limitation worth noting. It apparently struggles a bit with small, thin gold flakes if they happen to be oriented edge on to the coil.
The orientation issue. That can affect any detector to some degree with flat targets.
Yeah, but seems noted for this one, especially with those tiny, thin flakes. Since natural gold comes in all shapes and orientations, that's something prospectors using it should probably be aware of.
Good point. A physical limitation of how the detection field interacts with the target shape. So, okay, putting all this together, the strengths, the weaknesses, who is the ideal user for a Gold Monster 1000?
Based on everything, the ideal user profile seems pretty clear-cut. First, dedicated gold prospectors. People specifically hunting for small nuggets and flakes, especially in mineralized ground. If that's your main game, this machine seems like a serious contender.
Right, the specialists.
Also, maybe beginners to gold prospecting. People who want effective results finding small gold but don't want to get bogged down in complex settings. The automatic features make it really user-friendly for that.
Good entry point for gold hunting specifically.
And third, detectorists who travel a lot to remote gold fields. That packable design, the ruggedness, the reliable turn-on-and-go performance, it makes it a strong option for those expedition-type trips.
So, focused gold hunters. Beginners wanting simplicity for gold and remote adventurers. Makes sense. But conversely, who is this detector definitely not suitable for?
Well, pretty much everyone else. If you want a general-purpose machine for hunting parks, beaches, old home sites, this isn't it.
Not for coin shooting or relic hunting.
Definitely not. If your main targets are coins or relics, look elsewhere. If you detect in wet or salt-saturated environments often, nope.
Not for the beachcomber or river hunter.
If you really value precise target information before you dig, wanting to know if it's likely a coin or trash, the simple ID will frustrate you.
Okay.
And if your main goal is maximizing detection depth on all kinds of targets rather than specifically maximizing sensitivity to tiny gold, there are probably better, more versatile options.
It circles back to that quote, doesn't it?
It does, as that reviewer said so clearly. This is not a relic machine. This is not a multi-purpose machine. It is for gold prospecting only. End of story.
Can't argue with that clarity. It defines its niche perfectly. Now, for people who do fit that niche, maybe they own one or are thinking of buying one, any practical tips that surfaced from the research? Little tricks or things to know?
Yeah, a few good practical nuggets came up. Firstly, how you run the cable. Make sure the wire from the search coil goes over the top of the shaft.
Okay. Why is that?
Apparently, if it runs underneath, it can sometimes cause false signals. Something to do with the machine's ground balance and sensitivity to moisture or maybe static. So, cable over the top.
Good little setup tip. What else?
Remember the coil test results. That smaller 5-inch coil can genuinely outperform the larger one on very small gold. So don't just automatically slap on the bigger coil thinking it's better. Choose based on your main target, tiny flakes, or slightly larger nuggets coverage.
Match the coil to the goal. Smart.
And thirdly, echoing that expert advice, trust the automatic settings. Resist that temptation to constantly fiddle with sensitivity or try to manually tweak things in gold country.
Just let it do its thing.
Yeah, the advice is really let it control itself for the best performance in those mineralized gold areas. Trust the auto one sensitivity and the auto ground balance.
Those are really valuable, practical points. Proper setup, coil choice, trusting the auto features. Anything else? Any weird hacks?
Well, there was one pretty clever, maybe slightly desperate hack mentioned. If you're out in the absolute middle of nowhere and your shaft breaks,
Oh no.
apparently the universal shaft adapter that comes with it fits a standard broom handle.
Get out. Seriously.
Yep. A broom handle detector. Hopefully nobody ever needs to do that, but it's a pretty resourceful field repair tip to file away, just in case.
That's amazing. Talk about bushcraft detecting.
And one last point, maybe obvious but important. Even though it's simple to operate, there's still a learning curve with the audio.
Ah, interpreting the sounds.
Exactly. Spend time practicing. Really learn to distinguish the subtle differences in the tones, the volume changes, the zip-zips versus the solid beeps. That audio feedback is your main source of information with this machine.
Absolutely crucial. Developing your ear is key for any detector, maybe even more so for one with such a basic visual ID. Okay, let's talk money. Price point is around $800, $900.
Yeah, in that ballpark, so definitely not a cheap entry-level machine.
Right. And at that price, you're competing with some really capable all-around detectors on the market. So the value proposition, how does it stack up? Is it worth the money?
That really is the core question, isn't it? And the answer seems to be, it depends entirely on you and what you want to do.
Okay, so for whom is it good value?
For that person who is almost exclusively focused on prospecting for small gold, especially in those mineralized areas where this thing is designed to excel. For them, it's specialized performance, the great sensitivity to tiny gold others miss, the user-friendly auto features. That might absolutely justify the cost. It could pay for itself with other machines leave behind.
Makes sense. If that's your laser focus, the specialization is worth paying for.
Exactly. However, if you're looking for your first detector or your only detector and you want to hunt for different things in different places, parks, beaches, fields,
Then maybe not the best value.
probably not. You might be better served by a more versatile multi-purpose machine in that same $800, $900 price range. People often compare it to things like the Minelab Equinox 800, for example.
Which is known for being a great all-rounder.
Right. The Equinox offers excellent performance across many different target types and environments, maybe with only a slight trade-off in sensitivity on the absolute tiniest gold flakes compared to the monster.
So it's that classic specialist versus generalist dilemma.
Perfectly put. The analogy of a specialized tool versus a multi-tool fits perfectly here. The gold monster is like, I don't know, a high-precision scalpel for finding tiny gold, performs that one task incredibly well.
But you wouldn't use a scalpel to build a deck.
Exactly. Whereas a good multi-tool, like maybe the Equinox, can do many different jobs pretty darn well, even if it's not quite as hyper-specialized as the scalpel for that one specific task.
A really helpful comparison.
And that really brings us towards the end of our deep dive on the Minelab Gold Monster 1000. So just to quickly recap the main points,
Go for it.
this is a highly specialized detector. It truly excels at one thing, finding small gold, especially flakes and tiny nuggets in mineralized soil. That's its forte.
But, and it's a big but, it comes with significant limitations if you try to use it outside that very specific niche.
Its key strengths are that high 45 kilohertz frequency, the 24-bit processing power behind the scenes, and particularly that really effective automatic ground balancing. That combo gives it impressive sensitivity in tough ground.
And the user interface is commendably simple, easy to pick up and use, especially for beginners focused solely on gold.
But you have to weigh that against the trade-offs. Its lack of versatility, its extreme sensitivity to tiny bits of trash in non-gold field environments, and its poor performance in wet conditions. These things really restrict it as a general-purpose machine.
So, the bottom line seems to be, for the dedicated gold prospector, hunting primarily in dry, mineralized areas for small gold, the Gold Monster 1000 could be a very valuable, very effective tool, a real asset.
But for almost everyone else, people with broader detecting interests, those who hunt in varied locations or wet conditions, exploring more versatile detectors in that price range is probably the smarter move.
Well said.
Now, obviously, this is based on research and expert tests. If any of you listening have actually used the Gold Monster 1000 yourselves, we would absolutely love to hear your firsthand experiences, your insights, your stories.
Yeah, the good, the bad, the surprising finds.
Please head over to our website, find this deep dive, and share your thoughts in the comments section. We really value that real-world feedback.
And hey, while you're there, if there's another detector, or maybe some other piece of prospecting gear you'd like us to give the deep dive treatment to in the future, let us know.
Absolutely. Your suggestions drive what we cover next.
Your real-world experiences and ideas are just incredibly valuable. They help us make these discussions as comprehensive and useful as possible.
Definitely. So until our next deep dive, keep those coils swinging, assuming you're in the right environment for your specific machine.
Good caveat.
And maybe think about this as you go about your week. Considering specialized tools, not just in detecting, but in any pursuit. When does that deep focus, that specialization, yield results you just couldn't get otherwise? And when does having broader versatility offer the greater overall rewards in what you're interested in? Something to mull over.